Expect to obeisance on all the Vaishnavas, the devotees of the Lord. You are just like desired trees, able to fulfill the desires of everyone, so of following conditional soul. Here it is.
Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Vihari Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Vihari Gopinana Malapa Girivadada Hule Gopinana Malapa Girivadada Hule Yasodananda Rajadananjana Yasodananda Rajadananjana Jamuna Tera Manachare Yamuna Tera Manachare Jayaranmadhuva Kunya Vihare Jaya Radha Madhuva Kunya Vihare Gopi Jana Manapa Kiri Valadhari Upena Manapa Kiri Valadhari Yasodhana Nana Brajadana Yasodhana Nana Brajadana Jamuna Tera Vanachade Yamuna Tera Vanachade Radhamadhuva Kunyabihaute Jayo Radhamadhuva Kunyabihaute Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya, also Teta Sajashi Shivad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charanada Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sai Mukunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuranam Ki Jai Jagadadha Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasti Devi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bom. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Jaja Tarni. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 47th chapter, I believe 18th text, is that right? Nobody knows. Anyway, so whatever. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yad Anucharata Lila Karna Piyusha Viprut Sakred Adana Aviduta Dvandva Dharma Vinashta Sapati Graha Kutumbang Dinang Utsrija Dina Bahava Iha Vihonga Bhikshu Charyam Charanti Yadanucharita Lilal Karna Piyusha Viprut Shaviprut Sakrita Dana Viduta Dvandva Dharma Vinashta. Sapadagriha Kutumbam Dinam Utsrijadina. Bhavayiha Vahanga Vikshucharyam Charanti. Yad Anuchadatalila Karna Piyusha Viprut. Sakrita Dana Viduta Dwanda Dharma Vinashta. Sapadigraha Katumba Dinam Utsrijadina. Bhavaya Vihanga Vikshu Charyam Charanti. Yadanu Chadatalila Karna Piyusha Viprut. Sakridna Dana Viduta Dwanda Dharma Vinashtaha. Sapadi Griha Kutumbam Dinam Utsrijadina. Bhavaya Vihanga Bhikshu Charyam Chadanti. Ladies? No ladies. Avaya Vihanga Vivikshu Charyam Charanti. Ooh, good pronunciation. Really good. So, synonyms: yat, whose, anucharata, constantly performed activities, lila, of such pastimes, Karna, for the ears. Piyusha, of the nectar. Viprut, of a drop. Sakrit, just once. Adana, by the partaking. Viduta, removed entirely. Dvanva, of duality. Dharma, their propensities. Vinashta, ruined. Sapati, immediately. Graha, their homes. Kutumbam, and families. Dinam, wretched. Utsrija, rejecting. Dina, becoming themselves wretched. Bahava, many persons. Iha, here in Vrindavan. Vihanga, like birds. Bhikshu, a begging. Charyam, the livelihood. Charante, they pursue. Translation: to hear about the pastimes that Krishna regularly performs is nectar for the ears. For those who relish just a single drop of that nectar even once, their dedication to material duality is ruined. Many such persons have suddenly given up their wretched homes and families, and themselves becoming wretched, travel here to Vrindavan to wander about like birds begging for their living. So you can repeat: to hear about the pastimes that Krishna regularly performs is nectar for the ears. For those who relish just a single drop of that nectar, even once, their dedication to material duality is ruined. Many such persons have suddenly given up their wretched homes and families, and themselves becoming wretched, traveled here to Vrindavan to wander about like birds, begging for their living. So purport by the followers of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada: material duality is based on falsely thinking, this is mine, and that is yours. Or, this is our country, and that is yours. Or, this is my family, and this is yours, and so on. In fact, there is one absolute truth in which we all exist and to whom everything belongs. His beauty and pleasure are also absolute and infinite, and if one actually hears about this absolute truth called Krishna, one's dedication to the illusion of mundane duality is spoiled. According to the Acharyas, and certainly in accord with Sanskrit grammar, the last two words of the second line of this text may also be divided dharma avinashtaha. Then the entire line becomes part of a single compound, the meaning of which is that hearing about Krishna cleanses one of the irreligious duality, and thus one is not vanquished avinashta by material illusion. The word dina is then given the alternate reading of dhiraha, meaning that one becomes spiritually sober and thus gives up attachment to fleeting material relationships. The word vihanga, birds, would in this case refer to swans, the symbol of essential discrimination. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes Rupa Goswami as follows in connection with this verse. Bhogunya tva chiti tasya kaganamapi kedanat yatra sanushayam prokta tadbhaved abhijalpitam. When a lover indirectly states with remorse that her beloved is fit to be given up, such speech, uttered like the plaintive crying of a bird, is called abhijalpa. This is from another quote from the Ujjvala Nilamani, 14th chapter, text 194. So I'll read some of the Acharya's commentaries before I speak. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, well, what is so remarkable about our suffering after establishing a relationship with him? Discussion of his pastimes gives sorrow to the whole world. The pastimes which he performed at every moment, anuchadatam, are nectar for the ears. The sound itself gives joy. What to speak of the joy and understanding the meaning? By tasting just one drop, just once, friendship between men and women. And another meaning of dvandva dharma is given here. Remember in the verse it talked about duality? So here now this duality, instead of just like the general term duality, is mentioned by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as being the duality of male and female, men and women, is immediately cut. Friendship between men and women is immediately cut, viduda. If a wife hears, then she gives up affection for her husband. Why don't you step outside for a second? No more Bhagavatam class. For any of you ladies who are married, Krishna Priya, you better, little Krishna Priya, you better step outside, please, because we don't want you to give up affection for Gopal. That would be disastrous. You're all he has in this world. So, I'll repeat. If a wife hears, then she gives up affection for her husband. If a husband hears, he gives up affection for his wife. You two should leave. If a son hears, he should give up affection for mother and father. Okay. Ishwar Chaitanya, you have to leave also. Actually, we'd just be left with one or two people in the temple room. If a mother hears, she gives up affection for her son. Hopefully your mother didn't hear Ishwar Chaitanya. In this way, each person attains complete destruction. V refers to Vishesha Nashta. That means it's destroyed. Nashta. Nashta Moha. It is not the same suffering as in renunciation, but worse. The proof is the common people. Though the people who develop a taste for Krishna's pastimes are soft-hearted, they also become hard-hearted, merciless, and ungrateful on hearing the pastimes of hard-hearted Krishna. Just on hearing about him, they give up their fathers and mothers, in-laws who are suffering because having no other means of support, they do not have enough money for the next day's food. Or they give up their family members suffering due to separation as if they were dead people. Actually, just one comment. Like Prabhupada said that sannyas means to die civilly. In other words, you have no more relations. What to speak of wife and children dying, even if they themselves cannot be happy, even they themselves cannot be happy. They are penniless, dina, means the poor. Krishna's Dina Vatsal. For having left home with disturbed mind, they have forgotten to tie up in their cloth even a few coins. This is not the case for one man or two or three or four people. This has been the case with hundreds and hundreds of people. If the alternate reading, Dira, instead of Dina is taken, it means that in spite of seeing the wife cry, they are unmoved or hard-hearted. How do they maintain their lives? like Eva, birds, they survive on grains by begging, not by some big donation. I was actually even this morning, someone sent me a link of a Bhagavad Saptaha person, and that, getting big donations. And he was, I mean, this is not to criticize him, but I was just seeing in the Bhagavad Saptahas what they do. He had his eyes like half closed, and the tears were coming from his eyes. Big donations. Sometimes alternate reading, Iha is seen. In other words, I actually just, I need to unpack this. So, actually, first, anyway. So this is called Madhukari. Madhukari means like a bee. Like in Hindi, Madhumaki is a honeybee. So the bee, he doesn't tear apart the flower when he goes to the flower. He goes to many flowers. And he takes a little bit of pollen from each flower. And sometimes you'll see that another bee will come along and take pollen from that same flower. So he doesn't like take everything from a flower. He takes a little bit. So one of the first stages, it's not the first stage, the first Bahudak. One of the first stages of sannyasa is this madhukari, where one goes from home to home and just takes a little bit in each home, not a full meal, like one chapati, and then he'll go to someone else's house. And Prabhupada said there are so many chapatis in Vrindavan and so many sadhus wanting the chapatis, and there's more sadhus than there are chapatis. So you'll see in Vrindavan, sometimes when it's time for distribution of prasadam, it's called the roti competition. They just like run roti competition. They run from one temple to another, or one person's house to another. But this is the standard. You just take a little bit. It's not that you just have one favorite person. You just approach and you just get all your donations and everything from one person. Because what happens? The reason for that, there's a reason. The reason for that is if you just are dependent on any individual, you lose your own sense of discrimination. You no longer are Brahman. Actually, the statement is too much dependence on one person's mercy destroys one's spiritual life. Because you actually get controlled by that person. And then you have to do things just to please, or speak in such a way to please the person. It's like I was just in another temple, and in a temple someone asked me a question. It was interesting. I didn't realize he was the biggest donor of the temple. But somehow or other I answered nicely. So the devotee said, well, thank God you answered nicely, because he's the biggest donor of the temple. I didn't know that. Anyway, Krishna inspired me not to blow everything out. So like Eva birds, they survive on grains by begging, not by some big donation. This is what referring to Madhukari. Sometimes alternate reading, Iha is seen instead of Eva. In that case, it means they come and beg here in Vrindavan, the place of suffering, and suffer even more in our association. Wow. In other words, the gopis are suffering due to separation from Krishna. And they give up everything, and they come to Vrindavan, and they become wretched, and they're suffering, and they suffer even more by the association of the gopis, because they're feeling separation from Krishna. And that suffering, of course, is the greatest happiness, because it's more connection with Krishna. When you feel separation from Krishna, or from some pure devotee, you're actually closer to them, because the non-different nature of the Supreme Lord and the non-different nature of pure devotees. It's like sometimes, Krishna's so kind that we may dream of Prabhupada, and it's very intense. It's actually more intense than when Prabhupada was present. And it's suffering, why am I separated in this way? But at the same time, it's nectar. It's like a chutney. Prabhupada described a chutney one time. And he said a chutney should be so hot you can't eat it, and so sweet you can't resist it. And that's the way Prabhupada would cook chutneys. I remember when Prabhupada would cook the chutney, of course Prabhupada had so many different chutneys, plum chutney. Of course, in India, they don't have too many plums. Plum chutney and tomato. The favorite one of the devotees was tomato chutney. And, oh my God, it was so hot. And it was incredibly sweet and so hot. You just dip something in it, and that's Krishna consciousness. And this is really the mood. It's a chutney type of situation. Well, here, actually it's stated right here by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Krishna Leela is like a poisonous mixture of sugarcane juice and powdered seeds of the datura plant. Datura plant actually is like an hallucinogen. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's some people who thought that Lord Chaitanya had been given this datura. So, because he was exhibiting the symptoms of ecstasy. So it's very similar. The speaker of his pastimes is a murderer in the dress of a saint. The speaker, in other words, the speaker of Krishna's pastimes is committing murder, but he's dressed up like a saintly person because he's destroying our relationships within this world. The Puranas are a net. In other words, just like, like a fish net, something that, these are really picturesque descriptions, isn't it? The Puranas are a net which captures you. The speaker may be seen wandering from forest to forest with the Puranas under his arm. Vyasa and others are the makers of the net, which teaches that Krishna is supreme. This is accepted by Krishna, who then thinks, I will make all the people like the gopis fall into the ocean of suffering. So they're just accusing Krishna of being the most cruel. Seeing others suffering is his happiness. So he must bear the consequences of giving others such misery, not Vyasa or anyone else. In other words, it's not really Vyasadev's fault. It's Krishna's fault. Because he arranged for everything. I mean, this is the Gopi. It's just like extreme bitterness and anger at Krishna. But in this bitterness, if you remember, when you're bitter and angry with someone, you think of them more. Through the process of anger, of course, sometimes Prabhupada talks about this, how the demons sometimes think about Krishna, and they're just like completely absorbed. Of course, that's not favorable. This is favorable. But they're angry, this man. It's a very high stage of devotional service. They're angry with Krishna, and they're just thinking of more. If you remember being angry at someone, anyone here has ever been angry? No, I've never been angry. So if they're angry at someone, just like, you just think of them. You go to sleep at night thinking of them. You wake up thinking of them. It's just like, isn't it? When you're managing a temple, sometimes you're really angry with someone, and they stay in your mind all the time. But this anger is something different. So anyways, it's really anger. So Krishna must bear the consequence of giving others such misery, not Vyasa or anyone else. In this way, there are thousands of implications in this verse. Wow. In this verse, through indirect, praiseworthy condemnation, the excellence, this is another point, the excellence of bhakti is established. So in other words, they're showing how bhakti is so excellent that it's the highest taste. Rasa Jasa Param Drishta Divartate. Remorseful statements to give up Krishna because of inflicting pain on innocent people who suffer like birds is called abhijalpa. So that's Ujjala Nilamani. So I just want to mention a few things about this. Wow. It's amazing. Amazing verse and amazing analysis by the acharyas. So, Yadanu Charata Lila Karna Piyusha Viprut Sakritadana Vidura Vidhuta Dwandva Dharma Vinashta Sapatigriha Kutumbam Dinam Utsuja Dina Bahava Iha Vihanga Vikshu Charyam Charanti Somagana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shlakya Chakshur Miditam Yena Tasmai Shikudavena Maha. So one thing I got out of this verse is why do we not all experience this? Because you see that in general, when people hear about the pastimes of Krishna, they don't just give up everything so easily like that. I mean, otherwise we just have all sannyasis in our Krishna consciousness movement. And even when people do take sannyas, sometimes they don't make it. Even when people do give up, like they become brahmacharis, and they sit with each other and tell each other, we'll never get married. They eventually do get married. Why is this? This renunciation, which is mentioned here, doesn't occur. Actually, there's several reasons. And let's recite or remember a verse from Lord Kapiladev, Satam Prasangam Mamavirya Sambado Bhavanti Ritkarna Rasayana Kata Tajoshadashu Apavarga Vartmani Shraddha Aratir Bhakti Anukramishati. So, Satam Prasangam. First of all, one has to hear about these pastimes in the proper association. For us, that means those who are faithful to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and from Prabhupada, of course, because there's the tendency to people have nowadays is to maryada, that they violate the maryada, the ordinary etiquette, and they jump over the head of Prabhupada. And then they see or hear or understand Prabhupada through their own understanding of the past acharyas. Now, the past acharyas' teachings and Prabhupada's teachings are perfectly consistent with each other, perfectly in harmony. But when we approach the past acharyas, we're actually approaching them, at least for those of us who are not pure devotees or, extremely advanced. Then we're approaching them through our own hermeneutical lens, which is actually interesting. What is that hermeneutical lens? Well, let's describe hermeneutics first. Hermeneutics means basically when you read, it's usually used in relationship to Shastra, but it can be used in relationship to other things. Then you have certain standards by which you understand something. Everybody has certain standards. There's a lens. I mean, there's language lenses. I mean, any word you hear here, pastimes. That's our lens is based upon our upbringing, right? When we hear that word, pastimes. I mean, when I heard this word before I joined the movement, before I came in contact with Prabhupada, pastimes, I don't know what it meant in my mind. Probably never even heard the word before. Past times. I probably thought it meant something happened in the past. Right? Isn't that the normal pastime? Okay. I never used that. Yeah. America's favorite pastimes. That means activities. Or what happened in past times. That's the way I would think about it. So we're actually hearing this word based upon our conditioning. Isn't it interesting? Many of these words, nectar. I never used that word before I joined the Krishna conscious movement. Now it's used, isn't it? It's just like, this is nectar. Maybe strawberry nectar or something like that. I never use those words. Or relish. I thought that was something you put on a sandwich. So, anyway, so a lot of these words and the understanding of these words, I'm just making the point, come from our connection with His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So, it just, anyway, just trying to make a point. And so, when we, so in general, apart from the understanding of different words, when we read the books of the past acharyas, then we've been given like a whole methodology of understanding things from Prabhupada. I mean, just like, of course, the reason I'm talking about this, because right now there's a particular controversy being discussed amongst intellectuals as to the soul, where does soul come from? Did the soul come from the Brahmajyoti? And I've been posting some things, and and sometimes I get a little upset with the way people respond who are second generation or third generation devotees who have not yet, let's say, understood the lens through which we see things. That's, Prabhupada's understanding. Because many of the Acharya's commentaries can be understood in different ways. Just like you hear this particular verse, there's so many, I think it was Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said there's perhaps thousands of different understandings of this particular verse. So when dealing with a subject matter like where this soul came from, there's many different understandings. And so, but you can, depending upon your lens, you can actually see the Acharya is presenting one understanding or another understanding, isn't it? It's quite interesting. It's really interesting observing this particular phenomena. So therefore, getting back to the point, without getting into where the soul came from. My soul came from Long Island. So getting back to the point, it's just we have to hear the past, and first of all, we have to be trained up to hear. That's really important. Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanda Gurorita Archiyan Dasavan. One has to have the proper attitude and trained up to understand how to hear the pastimes. Of course, we hear submissively and everything like that. Here, and that Srila Prabhupada has given us that methodology with a mood of service. I mean, in addition to other factors. And then when you hear with the proper mood, satam prasangam, from the proper person, satam means like, the pure devotees, the assembly of pure devotees. Prasangam mama virya, about Krishna's activities, heroic activities in this particular case. Mama virya samveda talks about Krishna's heroic activities. Bhavanti vrit karna. In this way, the same word that's used in the verse here, that the karna, the ear, there's a channel between the ear and the heart. Vrit karna rasayana kata. There's actually a medicine, rasayana, like Brahmi rasayana, Jiva rasayana. I used to go to India and pick up all these rasayanas. You're going to live longer. Oh, here's the Jiva rasayana. So would come back with all these giant bottles. It was like a pudding. So, rasayana kata, that talk. Tejasanu ashu apavarga. Then one can proceed on the path of apavarga varmani. You understand? The path of apavarga. Right now we're on the path of pavarga. Pa ma purishma, right? Working hard, foaming at the mouth, fainting, and mrityu, dying. Okay. On that happy note, all glory.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Taksham Bharavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Bhako Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Priya Vriti Manti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Adi Purusham
Tamaham Bhajami Govindam. Namaham Vishnu Pataya Krishna Prasthaya Motale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Omane. No cartels. Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gurumani Vajane, Nivesesha, Shunyo Vode, Ashachane, Zatamane. Gurumani Vajane, Nivesesha, Deva Shachane. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurata Vrindana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurata Vrinda Gitana Pranijana Just say Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurata Krishna Chaitanya Ramanityananda Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurata Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Jai. Krishna, Krishna, Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha. Jaya Sri Radhe, Jaya Goswami Srila Prabhupada. Say, Go Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudhi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Gajay, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika.
धनं न जनं न सुन्दरीं कवितां वा जगदीश कामे मम जन्मनि जन्मनि